Hi guys and welcome back. Today I'm working on a couple little tiny watercolor paintings. There was about a week, maybe a month ago that I just burned through a bunch of little tiny watercolors and I just really enjoyed that. It was so pleasant to just finish a bunch of pieces really quickly in a row. I love doing that every once in a while. It's nice to just get that satisfaction of a bunch of completed pieces of artwork and to be able to move from one to the next. So these are just a couple of those that I did in that series. It was actually both of these. I'm going to be working on two little paintings, but they were both stickers for Patreon for last month. But the original paintings are available at my shop. So if you'd like to own a couple little originals, there's a link down in the description that will take you over to my shop. Let's just talk a bit about painting these things and painting little tiny things. That was actually one of my guilty pleasures, I guess you could say. I love working on little pieces because it's just so satisfying to be able to complete it really quickly, which, to be honest, is probably a flaw that I do have is the desire to quickly finish pieces of artwork. It's something that I have been working on, but I think maybe that is part of it is that when I work on a really small piece, I get that desire to do something quickly and have it completed, checked off. I can take care of that. But because it's so small, it also means that I can be a lot more happy about the quality. I can really focus on all of the details and get it precise and clean and sharp. So I think that it gives me a chance to feel the win on both sides. I can allow myself to indulge in a habit that I think is probably something that I don't love. Well, it's not probably, it definitely is something that I don't love, but it also just lets me really, really enjoy just getting the details right. It also really allows me to focus down on what exactly I'm painting. I think that there's a tendency of working larger when there's a lot more complications in the piece, a lot more things that can be distracting from one element to the next, is that it can be harder to make sure that each element is well designed, or even just harder to give it the attention that it needs. So each element, I would ideally like them to be designed as well as possible to have the best flow, the best shape, the best contrast, the best negative space, all of these things that go into each element. And then when you build up a very complex piece, that all comes together to create a piece that is as successful as possible and everything just fits together like a puzzle piece. But sometimes that can be really, really challenging, which is a good thing. It's a good thing to challenge yourself, and I enjoy doing that. I really enjoy working on large, complicated pieces that just feel so satisfying when I finally figure everything else out in the sketch. But it's also a huge relief to work on something much more simple so that I can get the details right, because there's not as many conflicting things that have to really be weighed and balanced against everything else. It does allow me to focus on the forms in a lot of ways that sometimes I get distracted from in larger pieces. And these two pieces and a third piece that I worked on off camera, those are all part of a set. So I worked on, like, I think almost 10 little watercolor paintings, and they were grouped up in about 3 paintings each. So each little group had a cohesion between them and a theme, and that was really nice. I love working like that because that allowed me to go from one of these pieces to the next, and I had a lot of the color design picks already figured out. The colors that I was choosing from my palette, it allowed me to just use those again. That way there was cohesion in the colors. It served a purpose, but it also took away some of the decision making that I previously had already made, which was really nice. This is actually the second one I think that I painted in these series. I think I painted the last little piece of this video first, and then I painted this one. So it was really fun to be able to work from a limited color palette that I had already picked and already chose. I did vary it a little bit in this one so that it had this pop of green minty color towards the end around the butterflies, but But for the most part, it just allowed me to really key in on just painting with the flow of things and enjoying the process. I do find that the more decisions that I make beforehand, the more enjoyable the piece usually goes. I very often will just kind of wing it when it comes to doing the colors for smaller pieces, and seeing how much smoother this process went and how much more I enjoyed it and I just got into the moment really is opening my eyes to being more conscious about that in future pieces, even when they're smaller, to allow myself to take the time to plan out the colors. And I think that that'll allow me to enjoy it more and have fun in the moment and just get into the actual application of the paint and the execution and not just decision making. I think that there's probably a lot of things like that in art that the more we can take away the distracting thoughts and clarify what we're working on in that exact moment, the better those steps can be. I've noticed that there are a lot of things that I'm not giving attention that should have the attention that I want to put into it. So there are things that I've noticed I've just really gotten a little lazy, feels a little harsh, but a little bit. I've gotten into a rhythm with some things. And one of those things, I think, is when I paint bones on my characters, which I love doing, sometimes I will be really careful about making sure that the reference is correct and that I'm referencing the bones, specifically the correct bones, in the angle that they're supposed to be in, and making them as accurate as possible outside of artistic license that I do still like to infuse in them, even when I'm being accurate. But sometimes when I work on pieces, I just kind of don't do those steps. I just wing it, and I don't love that effect nearly as much as I love the effect of when they're more accurate. And this painting just shows that. Earlier, I showed the scapula that was just totally the wrong shape. I painted them really like round and really low on her back, and it was bothering me. It was not looking right. So I looked up reference and fixed it, and I'm much happier with it. So I really love the outcome of how the bones look on this character, but it could have been avoided earlier. And if I had painted it differently, I wouldn't have been able to recover that problem. So that was just a wake up call that some things are worth taking the steps for. And I think that there are some things that I will group it into saying it's artistic license, that I'm just letting myself paint it with fluidity and I'm just putting my own personality into it. But really, I think it comes down to just not putting in as much effort to make sure that it's correct. And I can have both. I can have something that still feels like I put some life into it and it's not just really strictly accurate, but I can also make sure that it still looks much more like it's supposed to look. So again, that is one of the examples. There's a lot of examples that I've been noticing in my work that I'm trying to pay more attention to. Things like clothing or new hair textures. There's a lot. There's a lot that I'd love to focus on more that I haven't. And yeah, it's nice to wake up to it in time to be able to fix it in a piece. But this last step on this first painting, I feel like it really completed this piece. I often do feel like that last step is the thing that just makes a piece feel more magical. I love those steps, adding the little highlights or rim lighting or just little tiny details that just tie everything together or add this interest to a piece. In one of my college classes, the professor called it the stars and dots of a piece, the final things that you can put into it. And for this little tiny piece, it was really just the little glowing dots that are coming off of those glowy moths that I painted. And I loved it. I loved the contrast that it had on top of the dark bones that she had and the dark background. And sometimes details that I often paint like that, I like putting in glowy little dots. Sometimes just the way that it comes together in a piece, it just feels a little bit different and a little more special and more elevated. And in this piece, I felt that I was really, really enjoying just those last steps and how this piece came together. This second one, this is another testament of planning things out, for me at least. I actually painted her dress basically the color of what the butterflies are now first, and I did not like it. Luckily, I have gouache and I've been using it a lot more. I repainted it with black, and you can't even notice that it was a fix, but I'm much happier with that. And it helps the moths that are on top of her dress really stand out and have more contrast. But yeah, again, that's just a testament to things going smoother if I have things planned out. And again, this was the first piece that I did in the series, so I was kind of winging it through this one, and then the second one I had a much better idea of where I was going with the colors. And these two pieces are available. The originals are at my shop. There's a link down in the description. And I do want to give a quick shout out to the Patreon print of the month. We only have a couple of days left, but it is the Temperance Tarot card, and that will be a print that I'll send out to all of my print tier patrons. I also have a set of stickers that go out to the print tier and the sticker tier as well. So if you'd like to check those out, then make sure to check the link down in the description. So I've got a link for my Patreon and for my shop. And that is it for today. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.